Hey guys, it's Andy from Andrew Curry Digital Imaging. This is not scripted at all. This is going to be editing one of the images that I shot with Amy yesterday at the UHI campus. And I thought it might be interesting just for you guys to see the software that I use, the process that I go through in order to turn the original off camera into the final image. Just to get a couple of things out of the way before we start, I'm using a Canon EOS 80D. It's in RAW mode. I haven't shot in JPEG for a lot of years after a mistake I made. RAW mode, I just find that it's the most malleable way of capturing what's in front of the camera, but it gives you a lot of control in post to change the mood, the exposure, color temperatures, everything. It's to my mind, it's just the best way to shoot. Enough waffle, let's actually get on with it. This is one of the images that Amy selected from the shoot yesterday, one of the ones that she wants to have edited. This is it open in Capture 1.11. First things first, the first thing that I spot is this very bright area up in the top left. And just by hovering over that, we've got the values just above the image there. Now those are the values of the pixel that your mouse is hovering over. So we can see there just by moving around that area, we can see we're up in the 230s, touching on 240s. In fact, the blue is even higher than that. That's 248, 249. So that is a very bright area in that top corner. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Moving into the main part of the image, we can see straight away we've dropped below 200. So the main body of this image is well below the brightness of that top corner. So that top corner is going to have to be darkened, whether we use a vignette, whether we're cloning the trees on the right hand side. Something's going to have to happen with that because the focus has got to be the model. Something else to look at is the fence that's coming along this line here. Nothing necessarily wrong with it, but I think that is going to have to be cloned out just so we've got a little bit more simplicity, so it's not a distraction in there. But fortunately we've got a lot of space around the model just to be able to clone that out, just one less distraction in the image. So let's get on with it. This is the default settings. This is as the image came out of the camera. Haven't done anything to it yet. So I tend to edit by not having anything specific in mind as to the final image. I just like to play with the sliders, see what it does to the image, and just see where my instinct takes us. So first off, it's quite a warm image. It was a very bright day, getting on for mid-August, so it's still summer. But what I might just do is just warm that image up just a little bit just by bringing the Kelvin to the right. Now what I'll do, if I hold Alt and I hit this arrow, it'll temporarily switch that off as long as I've got left click held on that icon. So you can see original, change, original, change. So you can very quickly just go back and see if the alterations you're making are helping the image or not what you want. Tint, I don't think we're going to have to do a lot with. If I back it off, you see we're getting more greens coming through that, whereas if I take it the other way, you're starting to head more towards the reds, the purples, and it's just giving it that slightly unnatural look. So I might just leave that around 1, and again I'll just compare the two. So it's just adding that little touch of warmth, but it's not going too far. You're not altering the skin tone too much. Now, just for the giggles, I'm going to try shifting the shadows slightly towards the blue. Oop, I'm saying slightly, that's gone nearly all the way to the edge. All I'm trying to do is just that background, I just want to cool that off just a little bit. Let's leave it around there. Let's do the on and off trick again. So, original, altered, original, altered. And it's not affecting the skin tone too much, but what it is doing is the trees in the background, tonally the original image, they're quite close to main focus, but just by cooling those down, that just adds that little bit more separation to it, that little bit more distance. You could even put a blur in there in Photoshop if you wanted to. That has had the effect that I wanted it to, so let's move on. If we go to the exposure, we can already see just by hovering around the sort of values that we're getting in the top middle of the screen there. So around about the 200s. That's not bad. We don't need to do a massive amount with the exposure. We've got the histogram there at the top left as well. We can see there's a good range of tones in there. So if I just bump it up just one click even, just raising it up that little bit. Contrast. What I tend to do with the contrast is go quite extreme one way and then the other and just see what it does. Sometimes you come back into the middle because it's fine, but let's just play about with it. So heading it that way is just softening the image right off, which is quite nice actually. I'm liking that. Let's leave it at full -50 and let's just do the on and off. So that's just, yeah, that's taking a lot of the contrast out, especially around our neck, and that is actually quite a pleasing result. If we head the other way, I already know what's going to happen based on that. Yeah, that's not good. So let's leave that -50. The brightness, I kind of want to leave the brightness where it is. I think that on balance the image is okay. There's nothing really wrong with the brightness or anything like that. Saturation, I always tend to give this a little kick, depending on the image. In fact, if I put that up to 10 and then we'll do the on-off trick, bearing in mind that that is putting the contrast in as well, but that is very nice. It's just keeping the colors nicely saturated, especially on our bracelet here. If you look at that blue on there, let's just go off and on again, because we're changing the contrast, but it's keeping the saturation of that blue there, so that's quite nice. Do we need to do anything with dynamic range? I don't think so, although I might just, let's pop that to 15, because that's just taking a little bit of the shine off our skin there. That was the wrong off and on. Well done. Yeah, so that's just softened that light off a little bit. Shadows, we don't need to touch. Clarity. This is one of my favorite sliders. I just play with this and see what the result is based off the image. Now, this is lending itself towards a softer image, I think. Let's back the clarity right off and you can see straight away what that does. So if I put that down, even -10, it's not doing a massive amount. Say -20, and structure. I mean, structure is going to almost make it look as though I didn't achieve focus. But structure, actually, let's swing that the other way. And I'm quite liking that result. One thing you might notice is I just tend to fiddle about with these sliders and put it to some arbitrary number. But visually, I just think it works to me. And this is one of the major lessons I've had to learn about photography is, you know, there's any amount of tutorials out there that'll tell you how to achieve a certain effect, but ultimately the only person you've got to make happy is yourself. Okay, if you're the photographer, you're shooting for yourself. If it's a paid project, commercial work, something like that, then yes, you're shooting for your client. But doing this sort of shoot, when you're both just there to get images, you're both giving up your own time, and especially in this case when other people have been involved. Heidi designed and made the dress for Amy to wear, so you've got all these creative people coming together, giving up that time, meeting at a certain location, doing a shoot. I'm always thinking, well, I want to get images that I'm happy with, but at the same time I want to get images that Amy's happy with, and I want to get images that Heidi can take away and use in our own advertising, anything like that. It's a collaborative process. I've gone completely off track. Okay, so now vignetting. Let's try. It's a catch-22. Do you want to take it dark? Which would help quite a bit with the levels up here. You see how they've dipped down to sort of mid 150s, 160s, 170s compared to the 230s, 240s they were at the start. It's helped isolate Amy quite a bit as well. We still need to fix the fence in the background there, but I think that's quite subtle. The only thing I might want to do is just, because of that vignette, just click the exposure up just that little bit more, just to correct for that. So if we do the sort of master on off at the top, so again I'm going to hold Alt, hold left click. That was the out of camera. That's what was started with. That's where we are now. So original, edit. What I might do just looking at that is actually do an oval select with quite a large feather in Photoshop and just blur out everything around it just to isolate her a lot more. With that in mind, let's just go to the sharpening. I'm going to bump this up to 275. That is my default amount. Don't ask us why. After doing thousands of images the last 2 or 3 years, that's the figure that I like using. It just works. Obviously depend on the ISO that you've got your camera on. At the minute it's at 200. You can see that down here. 1/2000th of a second, f2.8 at 70mm. I was using the 70 to 200 f2.8L USM2 lens, which I just absolutely love to pieces. It is such a sharp lens, amazingly quick to focus, and in fact some of the footage in the other video was shot with that lens as well on the 80D, so it's a fantastic lens. Okay, so back on track. Sharpening's done. That's set at 275. If we go to noise reduction, I'm at ISO 200. I know with this camera I'll drop that down to about 45. And in fact, if we go up to that top left, we have got some noise in the trees there and bits and pieces. If I turn that right down, we can see that's pretty noisy. Bump that up to the default 50. Okay. But I can just get away with turning that down just a little bit because I'm at ISO 200. And again, that's just because I've put sort of 12,000 images through this camera and I just know what level works really for that sort of image. So that's everything I think we need to do in here. I've got my presets set up. It's going to export it to a Adobe PSD document, 16-bit in the Pro Photo color space. That is purely so it keeps as much color information as possible rather than putting it into Adobe RGB, something like that. I like Pro Photo because it just maintains everything. So if I hit process on that, that's going to have itself a short think. There we go. So there's my image in Photoshop. So this is with all of the edits that we've made in Capture One. Excuse the squeaking in the background if you heard it. That's my chair. First things first, image auto contrast. Normally I find that can help, but in that particular case it's just taking it a bit too far away from what I want really. So let's tackle this fence. Let's see if we can cleanly get rid of that. This little bit at the edge, what we could do is if I swap to the healing brush, make it a bit bigger. We're going to have to be careful around there. Should we just ignore that side? Possibly. Yeah, let's just ignore that side. And if I start, say, here, and just do a very quick it's not working for me. Tell you what, let's see if the AI makes a better job of it. If I just do a rough, oops, that's because I've got it on fixed ratio after an image I was working on earlier. That always catches me out. So if we just do a quick select just around that, Shift F5 to bring up the, oops, come on, thank you, the fill, which is on content aware. So Photoshop's going to go away, it's going to make some decisions about how it's going to fill that area, and we'll see what the result is. It might do it well, most of the time it does, but this is actually a complicated fill for it, and in fact, yeah, it hasn't made a very good job of that at all. Now, what's going to be the best way to tackle this? Spot healing brush. We'll just make that bigger than. I don't know. Nah. Let's just keep going back. Really not sure about that at all. Okay. And right, rather than me just, mess about with that too much, I'm going to find a better way of dealing with that. Alternatively, let's go and do the blur that I was talking about earlier. We might find that just helps. So let's set some rough guides up. Just to constrain the ellipse that I'm going to draw. So there we go, that looks like a good selection. Let's just go select inverse, so the blur is only going to affect everything other than Amy, because we want her to stay in focus. We don't want any blur on her at all. So if we go to blur, we'll go to, now let's see, Gaussian blur, because that's going to give us some control over it, and then we can actually see in the preview in real time what it's going to do. Let's drop that to, no, that's too much. Sod it, let's go 25. Get rid of the lines. That's too much, that's way too much. 20, 10. No, we can stand a bit more than that. 15. Middle of the road. I'm liking that. I think it's maybe just a touch too much. Let's say 12.5 just to be really finicky and just split it right down the middle. So that has helped out with that fence terminology. Get it right. Yeah, I'm quite liking that result. What we could do as well, we've still got that selection. Let's go to brightness contrast. Minus 20 for that. 20 the other way. Yeah, let's go with that. What I could always do, deselect, is even, I'd be tempted to crop to that line, but I feel as though it's going to push Amy too far towards the top of the frame if we do that. I'll do the select and then you can see what I mean. So we just do the select, image crop, Control H just to hide all your guides and everything like that. Actually, that's not terrible. If we just put a bit of space, a bit of white space on the canvas at the top, let's switch to inches height. If we anchor it at the bottom, and let's make it 17.9 inches instead of 16, so that just gives us a smidge at the top. Now, again, this might not work because it's quite a close select, but let's do a content aware fill, and if that extends that field, that's going to be very nice indeed. Oh wow, perfect ish. It's perfect in terms of it's done what I wanted it to do. It's extended the field above our head. The one thing I was concerned about was because the select was very close to the top of our head. Sometimes with a content aware fill, it'll take some of that element and put it into the fill. So you get duplication of the top of our head, hair texture in there somewhere. It might just mess it up in some way. Now the one thing you might spot is that we've got a repeating pattern. We've got this sort of dark area here, and it's replicated that above it. So we need to get rid of that. Not too much else repeating. There's this band here and here that we can see. So there's a couple of little touch-up elements that we're going to have to do just to tidy that up just a little bit more. So I'm just going to do a rough select down here, not too critical, and let's just paint that out. And again, do a select around here. Oh, that's maybe too far down the image because that was showing up a bit too sharp there. Tell you what, let's do a select across here as well. And just paint that out. Okay, it's not the... There's also a line that seems to run all the way across that. So let's just narrow that right down. Go to here. Just picking different areas now there's not as many patterns in there. And then what I might do is just to select across that, back to our blurs again. Let's do a Gaussian. Can drop right down. It just needs to blur it off just that little bit. Yeah, solid colour, yay! Okay, too much. Bear in mind that's quite a hard line as well. Let's drop that to 7. Bang. There's your final image. I hope that's been informative. I can't believe I've actually been recording for nearly half an hour now, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you get on with your day. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to do more of these videos in future. Hopefully my style of presenting will improve as well, and I won't be quite as much off-topic waffle, but that is me all over. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Thanks for the support. Like the video if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to be notified when I put more content online. It's great to have you along. Cheers.